Hey, it's Dave with Beat Your Face Commander. Today's deck tech is going to be a little different than what I normally do. The commander for this deck is Tuvasa the Sunlit. Tuvasa gets +1/+1 for each enchantment you control. Whenever you cast your first enchantment spell each turn, you get to draw a card. So obviously this deck has got quite a few enchantments in it. It also has some life gain synergy, a few win conditions that are a little bit different than the way I normally go. And these cards aren't in any particular order, but let's get started. So I'm running Sanctum Weaver. It's an enchantment creature dryad that adds X mana of any color, where X is the number of enchantments you control. Transcendent Envoy reduces your aura spells by 1. It's a 1/2 flyer. Sith's Harvest Hand. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you gain a life and draw a card. Daxos Blessed by the Sun. His toughness is equal to your devotion to white. And whenever another creature enters the battlefield or dies, you gain a life. Courser Crewfix. You can play the top card of your library reveal. If it's a land card, you can play it. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain a life. This does not get around the 1 land per turn rule. You need other cards that allow you to play additional lands if you want to play lands off the top with Cursor, assuming you haven't played one from hand. Karametri, God of the Harvest. 6/7 Indestructible God. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you may search your library for a forest or plains card, put on the battlefield tap, then shuffle your library. Nylea, Keen-Eyed. 5/6 Indestructible God. Creature spells you cast cost 1 less. You can pay 2 and a forest to reveal top card of your library. If it's a creature, put it into your hand. Otherwise, you can put it in your graveyard. Perplexing Chimera. Perplexing Chimera. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may exchange control of Perplexing Chimera and that spell. So it's a good way to mess with people's big plays. Archetype of Endurance. Creatures you control have hexproof, and creatures your opponents control lose and can't have or gain hexproof. Ifara, God of the Polis. The 6/5 Indestructible God. At the beginning of each upkeep, if you had another creature enter the battlefield under your control last turn, draw a card. So this is a good way to generate a lot of card draw. Destiny Spinner makes creatures and enchantment spells you control uncounterable. It also has an ability to tap 3 in a forest. You can turn a land into an XX elemental creature with trample and haste until end of turn, where X is the number of enchantments you control. It's still a land. Nykthos Paragon. When you gain life, you can put that many 1/1 counters on each creature you control. You can only do it once a turn. There's a lot of life gain synergies in this, so this is a good card to have. Light of Day. Black creatures can't attack or block. It's a little black hate. Exploration lets you play an additional land on each turn. Season of Growth. Whenever a creature enters battle under your controls, scry 1. Whenever you cast a spell that targets a creature you control, draw a card. So realistically, this card's in here for the first ability. There's a lot of enchantment creatures, regular creatures, and there's some token generating effects as well. Johnny's Welcome. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, gain a life. Cryptolith Rite. Let your creatures tap for 1 mana of any color. Quarter Grace. When it enters the battlefield, you become the Monarch. And on your upkeep, you create either a 1/1 spirit creature token with flying or a 4/4 angel creature token with flying, depending on if you're the Monarch. Rites of Flourishing. Each player gets to draw an additional card and play an additional land on their turn. Johnny's Mantra. You can gain a life at the beginning of your upkeep. Leyline of Abundance lets your creatures tap for an additional forest when they tap for mana, and then you can tap 6 and 2 forests to put 1/1 counter on each creature you control. Enchantress's Presence. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, draw a card. Sigil of the Empty Throne. Cast an enchantment, create a 4/4 angel creature token. Propaganda makes your opponents pay 2 more for each creature that they control attacking you. Ghostly Prison does the same thing. Leyline of Sanctity makes you hexproof. Conversion turns all mountains into basic plains. You have to pay 2 during your 2 plains during your upkeep to keep it on the board, but it's a good way to mess with red decks. Contemplation. Whenever you successfully cast a spell, you gain life. Mystic Remora. Unless your opponents pay 4 to counter the effect, whenever they cast a non-creature spell, you can draw a card. Does have a cumulative upkeep of 1, but if you get a round or 2 of this around the table, it's definitely worth the 1 island. Smothering Tide. Whenever an opponent draws a card, if they don't pay 2, you create a treasure token. Yeah, this one's a proxy. I do have Smothering Tide, but I didn't really feel like purchasing another one. This one was $4. Beats paying, the 20, whatever it is right now. Wilderness Reclamation, beginning of your end step, untap all lands you control. Retreat to Coralheim. It's a landfall. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, choose one. Tap or untap a target creature, which plays really well with Willbreaker. Whenever a creature an opponent controls becomes the target of a spell or ability you control, gain control of that creature for as long as you control Willbreaker. Drop a land, tap a creature, take it. Sarnheim Aspirant reduces the cost of your angels by 2. Heal of the Pride gets you 2 life for each creature that enters the battlefield under your control. Archon of Absolution. Some more Pillow Fort. Creatures can't attack you or a planeswalker you control unless they pay 1 for each of those creatures. Arcancy Omnipotent. You tap to draw 3 cards. You tap 2 islands and 2 generics, return to your hand for evasion. Sun Titan. Whenever he enters the battlefield or attacks, you can return a target permanent with converted mana cost of 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. This is a good way to get your stuff back if you lose it. Azusa Lost by Seeking lets you play 2 additional lands each turn. Core Celebrant gains your life when creatures on the battlefield. Valkyrie Heartbringer. If you gain 4 more life on a turn, you get to create a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying vigilance, and it's a 4/5 flying lifelink. Illusory Angel costs 3 for a 4/4. The only downside is it has to be the second spell you cast. You can't cast it on it can't be the first spell. Tidal Barracuda gives you flash. It gives everybody flash, but on your turns, your opponents can't cast spells. Archon of Valor's Reach. It's a 5/6 flying vigilance trample. When it enters the battlefield, you choose an artifact, enchantment, instant, sorcery, or planeswalker. Players can't cast spells of the chosen type. Realistically, I don't run a lot of non-creature spells in this deck, but or enchantments, obviously. So, but I would probably most likely be targeting instants to just kind of reduce my opponent's abilities to at spot removal mainly spot removal. Sarah Senate. It's a 1-drop with lifelink. If you got 30 more life, it gets +5/+5 and has flying. Early game, this is amazing. Late game, even in this deck, you should have enough life that you wouldn't be casting it as a 1/1. Keeper the Cord. Helps you keep up with your mana. At the beginning of your end step, if a player controls more, at the beginning of each opponent's end step, if that player controls more creatures, you create a 1/1 white soldier creature token. And if they control more lands, you can search for your library for planes, put it on a battlefield tapped, and shuffle your library. Resplendent Angel, 2 planes and a generic for a 3/3 flyer. You can tap 3 planes and 3 generic to give it +2/+2 in lifelink, and if you gain 5 or more life, you create a 4/4 angel creature token with flying and vigilance. Soul Warden, whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you gain a life. It doesn't matter whose creature it is. Intrepid Hero. You can tap him to destroy a creature with power 4 or greater. It's a good way to get rid of big threats. Trelasaro, Moon Dancer. Whenever you gain a life, she gets a 1/1 counter. And Scries. Starheim Courser reduces artifacts and enchantment spells by 1. Consecrated Sphinx for some additional card draw on your opponent's turns. Satyr Enchanter. When you cast an enchantment spell, you get to draw a card. Grand Abolisher. During your turn, your opponents can't cast spells or activate abilities of artifacts, creatures, or enchantments. It's pretty good. Pretty good in any deck, I'd say. Felidar Sovereign. It's one of the win cons in this deck. He's a 4/6 Vigilance lifelink. Beginning of your upkeep. If you have 40 or more life, you win the game. Long story short, you drop it on the table. If it's still alive when it makes it back, assuming you have 40 life or more, that's it. I've only pulled this off a couple of times, and it definitely, as soon as it hits the table, you become the object of everyone's hate, but still worth a shot. Fashioned Order. Other creatures enter the battlefield, you gain life. Joiner Depth lets your lands tap for any mana color. Righteous Valkyrie. Whenever an angel or cleric enters the battlefield under your control, you gain life equal to that creature's toughness. And as long as you have 7 life more than your starting total, creatures you control get +2/+2. So the anthem effect is pretty nice. Realistically, I threw it in here because there's enough clerics and angels to make that first static ability worthwhile. Congregate. One of the few instances I play. In this case, it would be me, gaining 2 life for each creature on the battlefield, your opponents included. And then a couple of counter spells, because you never know when you shut down somebody's infinite combo or just the play that's going to let them take or run away with the game. So we've got Pact of Negation. It costs 0. At the beginning of your next upkeep, you have to pay 2 islands and 3 generic. If you don't, you lose the game. And Mana Drain. 2 islands. Counter spell at the beginning of your next main phase, add an amount of colorless mana equal to that spell's converted mana cost. So that's probably, I used to say counterspell was the best counterspell in the game. Obviously, Mana Drain is a lot better, I think, but Mana Drain is probably the best counterspell in the game. And then, you know, Force of Will, as good as it is, it's very situational. A deck like this is 3 colors, it wouldn't be nearly as good as it would in a mono or a dual color deck. Approach of the Second Sun. 6 in the plains. It's a sorcery. I believe it's the only sorcery in this deck. If it was cast from your hand and you cast another spell named Approach of the Second Sun this game, you win the game. Otherwise, you put it into its owner's library, 7th from the top, and you gain 7 life. Realistically, in a deck that draws cards like this one does, it's not going to be too hard to get down to get it the second time to cast it again. And then the final win con, Tuvasa Reservoir. This is a very beat your face commander kind of a way to win. When you cast a spell, you gain a life for each spell you've cast this turn, and then you can pay 50 life to do 50 damage to a target creature or player. Long story short, if you have the life and someone's threatening you, you can take them out the game right there. For lands, running a few fetch lands. Got Evolving Wilds, Myriad Landscape, Terramorphic Expanse, and Fabled Passage to kind of get your mana fixed. As well as Command Tower, which you can tap for any of the 3. For dual lands, I'm running Canopy Vista, Sungrass Prairie, Selesnya Sanctuary, Sunpetal Grove, Fortified Village, and Crow's and Verge for white-green. For white-blue, I have an Azorius Chancery. And then for blue-green, I'm running Waterlogged Grove, Simic Growth Chamber, and Hinterland Harbor. There's a couple other lands in here that are non-basics. Got a Reliquary Tower. With the amount of land being, or amount of cards being drawn through this deck, it's a good idea to have some stuff to eliminate your maximum hand size. A Rogue's Passage. With the amount of enchantments, there's a good chance that the commander could swing in for commander damage and win that way. And Treasure Vault. This is one of the new lands from Forgotten Realms. I've never really used this before, but the potential to create a whole bunch of treasure tokens seems interesting to me. It is an artifact land, so I have high hopes for it. In terms of basic lands, I run 6 forests, 6 plains, and 6 islands. So that is Tuvasa the Sunlit. Got some less conventional win strategies in it. Great deal of potential for card draw, and some pretty decent effects.